what should we all be working toward as members of Church on Purpose. So we talked about what members should know and understand, and what members should be committed to, and what the expectations are that members should have as a part of our church, so that there can be a common understanding when we talk about how we work together and how we move forward in pursuit of what we believe the Lord has for us as a church. And so that gives us the opportunity, having talked about and laid the foundation with understanding mature discipleship, and having also talked about understanding mature membership, uh, gives us the opportunity now to kind of talk about the third and the final phase of growth and maturity at Church on Purpose, and that is the level of leadership. And so tonight we are going to begin the third and final section of this series by talking about the mature leader. And so, of course, similar fashion to the maturity conversation around discipleship and the maturity conversation around membership, we're going to talk about this in three different phases. We're going to talk about the head of a mature leader, the heart of a mature leader, and then, of course, the hands of a mature leader. And again, I want to express my gratitude to Pastor Dwayne Hawkins just for his leadership in guiding us as a church through this process of identifying these, and then express my gratitude just for his ongoing support of Church on Purpose, and for just the phenomenal job that he did with creating this outline, and beginning this process and providing this as a resource for the church. It truly is a tremendous resource for the body of Christ, and I'm appreciative for his labor in helping to produce it and prepare it for us. All right, so let's see. So we are going to, let's see. No, let's put that over there. So I'm trying to get my screen straight now that my screen acts like it wants to cooperate. We'll see how long that lasts. Um, let's move that there. I want to make sure that I am able to see you all's messages should you drop anything in the chat as we go through tonight, um, and make sure I don't miss you. That'll work there. That there. There we go. All right. Put that there. Okay. All right. So tonight we're going to focus on just the first aspect of mature leadership. So we're going to talk about the head of a mature leader. And as we kind of go through these lessons tonight, I do want to remind us, of course, that as we focus in on kind of the aspects of mature leadership, it doesn't run in contrast or contrary to the standards or the targets that have already been established for mature discipleship or mature membership. Because the reality is that it's not possible to be a mature leader in the church, in the kingdom. It's not possible to be a mature leader without first being a mature disciple and a mature member. And so as we zero in and focus on what mature leadership looks like, this is it's not a either or with what we have already talked about. This is in addition to. It's a both and. Um, our maturity in our faith in general begins with growing and maturing as a disciple of Jesus Christ. Our connection to the church helps to facilitate that process. And then there are certain responsibilities we have with being a member of an organization, and that we have to grow in our maturity and how we interact and navigate that space together as a part of the organism. And then as we're given the opportunity to become leaders in that space, there are certain standards and certain targets that we have for that in order to be able to lead effectively in that space and in a way that honors God. And so we're going to begin this conversation again by talking about the head of a mature leader. And so mature leaders know and understand the heart of the pastor. Mature leaders know and understand the pulse of the congregation, and they also understand the purpose and the direction of their respective areas of ministry. Okay. So those are going to be the three elements that we dig into tonight. And so the first one that we're going to jump into is that mature leaders know and understand the heart of the pastor. So before I kind of go into the outline for this particular section, give me two people, a minimum of two people that will unmute and share why you believe it's important that a leader in the church um, understand the heart of the pastor.
What up, y'all? So, coming from a background of church leadership, one of the things that I've learned over the years in relation to the question is that it's much easier on the pastor in regards to sharing the vision of a church when the leadership has a good understanding of what the pastor's trying to get across, what he's trying to convey, and kind of what the Lord is, placed in their heart and showed them as far as where the church is going to be headed. It's one thing for the pastor to have to struggle to convey it to church members themselves, right? Just quote unquote lay people. But it's a whole nother challenge when the people who the pastor works with on a more or less day-to-day basis, those individuals who are supposed to be close to the work of ministry, understanding its intricacies and its layout and the structure and that type of thing, when those individuals have a difficult time understanding it and trying to convey it. And so it's really important for that reason, number one, because if the leaders don't quite understand it, then the logical next question is, okay, well, how difficult then is it going to be to convey to membership, just general membership? The leaders are to be more like the leaders are kind of like delegated messengers of the vision of the church, of the pastor, so to speak. Because the pastor can't be in 10 different places at once. Although he may try, he cannot be, so being able to have leaders kind of as extensions of the pastor in one sense is very helpful. So that's one reason. Another reason is so that as the pastor reinforces or shares the vision and mission from the pulpit at events and during other opportunities, when leaders understand the heart of kind of where the pastor is wanting to go, then that can be reinforced in between those opportunities. Because as a church grows, like coming from our church back home in Virginia, at one point we had, I think it was like 1,500 to 2,000 people that were in attendance on a Sunday. A little bit less than that, as far as like regular activity throughout the week, with Bible study and events. And so you can imagine, Pastor Houston couldn't be anywhere and everywhere. He couldn't communicate with any and every single person. It just wasn't possible. And so having leaders in the church that could reinforce the mission of the church. I mean, being able to recite verbatim basically what the mission of the church is, talk about the various pillars of the church and kind of opportunities the church has to serve and where the church is headed and that kind of thing, was very helpful because, again, while the pastor does talk about these things on a Sunday, it needs to be reinforced throughout the week during team meetings, during ministry meetings, during ministry activity. And this isn't just spoken, but this is also, demonstration and model through behavior as well. The kind of character that we want to portray as ministry, and the way in which we want to represent the ministry in the public square and those type of things. When leaders understand those type of things, when leaders really grasp kind of where the pastor is coming from and where the pastor believes the Lord is leading the church, then it's that much easier on the pastor with regards to leading ministry as a whole. Now, of course, the flip side of that coin is, being able to be a wise leader and being able to say, okay, when the pastor's kind of going left, there's opportunity and recourse to be able to express those kind of concerns and that kind of thing, because we obviously, don't promote following leadership blindly, right? We do this with intelligence and that kind of thing. But so long as the pastor's in line with the word and isn't leading people to do crazy stuff and trying to take advantage of folk, we need to be in line with that if we're going to be committed leaders at a church.
Thank you. Somebody else. One more person.
So I was trying to unmute. All right. So basically, it is having the heart of the pastor is the pastor being able to trust you to be in that leadership position. Why? Because you know his heart, you know the passion, just like Q said, you know the vision and the mission of the church, and not only being able to build that trust and understanding, but because you know the pastor's heart, you also know the culture of the church. And it's very important for leadership that is underneath our pastor to be able to preserve the culture of the church. And then the other one is, like Q said, I had written down that we are, as leaders in the church, we're an extension of the pastor. So we represent the pastor when the pastor is not physically there at our meetings or at different functions. We're an extension of our church body. So being able to understand the heart of our passion of our pastor and knowing what our ministry is built upon and having that foundation is very important for anyone that is in leadership.
Thank you. We got time. Does anybody else want to share? Go ahead, Gladys.
I'll just add that knowing what the pastor is all about and what his vision is and what he sees, how he sees the church, playing a role in the lives of its members in the community helps you know how you fit in to that picture, because it's not just the pastor and his vision and his calling that makes up a church. We're all one body and we all have different functions and different gifts, that we bring to the body that allows the body to move forward. So knowing what the pastor is all about helps us, determine how my gifts fit. And sometimes it might be, my gifts don't fit here. They may fit, somewhere else. But knowing the pastor and what his vision is and what he's all about helps us do that.
Yeah. So thank you all. Good insight, good perspective, well-rounded, and I really don't feel the need to re-emphasize or overemphasize anything. I think we'll touch on some additional aspects of it as we kind of move through this particular outline. But it is absolutely necessary, as we are, in any place that we are committing ourselves and investing our time, energy, effort, resources, that we are connected with not only the head and the thoughts, but also with the heart. And that is in terms of motivation, but also in terms of knowing and understanding the person. And so when we talk about the heart of a pastor, knowing the heart of the pastor, um, we talk about knowing hopes. We talk about knowing their hindrances, and also knowing the helps. So when we talk about knowing the hopes of the pastor, that's knowing their desires and their aspirations. Um, because and a lot of times these are connected to vision, but are not synonymous with vision. You know, the um hopes and aspirations certainly fuel and feed vision and drive towards vision, but they're not always synonymous, because hopes and desires and aspirations can have a much more immediate impact than vision. Vision, of course, is long term, um, but the desires and the aspirations, while they do apply to long term, they also apply to immediate as well. And when you know those things, then you understand kind of what the priorities are of leadership, which help us to function more effectively and more efficiently, because we're not moving against the flow. But and when we don't know those things, then we can find ourselves kind of working in this space of tension where we end up trying to um, prioritize or trying to work in a particular area that's not a priority for leadership, and it ends up causing this tension because we're thinking that we need to be going this way, but leadership has different aspirations and different desires. And that, of course, is one of those moments, kind of to Gladys's point, where we have to figure out for ourselves, like, if this is where we want to be, then we've got to realign what we're trying to do with where leadership is trying to go, or we have to realign ourselves with different leadership that's going the direction that we're trying to go. And so knowing the heart, knowing the desires and the aspirations, knowing the hopes of the pastor is extremely important. And I think this is a rhetorical question. You don't have to answer this out loud, but do you know the desires and the aspirations of your pastor? Um, now this is a conversation that we're having with ourselves, but of course we're also live streaming this. And so, for those of you that are watching us on Facebook or on YouTube or on the church website, and whether you're watching it today or watching the recording, that's a question that you have to answer for yourself. Do you really understand the desires and the aspirations of your pastor? And that's not the answer. The correct answer to that question is, I think so. That's not the correct answer to that question. Um, it's a yes or no question. Um, you know, Understanding those, um, means that you have to be in position and in the places to be able to hear those kind of things. And consistent engagement and participation in Bible study is one of the best places that you're going to be able to see behind the curtain at what drives and what motivates, because those things, while they can be touched on Sunday mornings, you really don't have the opportunity to really dig into them like you do on Wednesdays. Because when we talk about hopes, there are really kind of three levels of hopes. We're talking about the hopes that they have for the church, the hopes that they have for the people of the church, and then even the hopes that they have for themselves. And And when we understand those, it equips us with a different level of insight at what drives and what is motivating the leader, which makes it easier for us to be able to find that rhythm of working together. So much of walking together is the ability to be able to identify what we agree on and being able to walk together in what we agree on, for, however long that lasts. It's funny because I was thinking about, and you'll probably end up hearing this in the future once I kind of flesh it out a little bit more. But of course, this weekend I had the opportunity to travel back to the East Coast to do some training. And when I was sitting in the airport, I was just thinking about, the major questions of humanity, um, philosophizing, as I was sitting in the airport waiting. I was like, as much division as we deal with in just America alone, in our different groups and all that kind of stuff, it's really kind of it's really kind of amazing that people from all different backgrounds, all socioeconomic statuses, with all different political views. I mean, people that really couldn't be more diametrically different in how they live out their lives on a daily basis, can for 2 to 3 hours um, meet at the same place with the same regulations, um, board a plane in an orderly fashion, go to their seat, sit next to people that they don't know, all in pursuit of arriving at the same destination. And while we may not have to do life together forever, we can agree that in this moment we can set our differences aside because there's a commonality of desire in arriving at a common destination. And so, even though this may be the first leg of my journey and the last leg of someone else's journey, we can take this plane together because for this particular phase of the trip, we both want to get there. And this is how we're getting there. And I think if we took that and were able to apply it to our lives just in general, it would help to reduce some stress, but also increase the effectiveness of the contributions that we're able to make and the distribution of our gifts. And the fulfillment that we find because we would be in spaces where we can find that commonality and that agreement and understand that we might not agree, and we might not be on the plane all the way to our final destination, but we can at least agree that for this leg of the journey we're trying to get to the same place, so let's just go together. um Going together helps to save resources because flying commercial is a lot cheaper than renting your own private jet and you being the only person on there. And so going together helps to save resources. And there are like so many other parallels. Like I said, you'll probably end up hearing this again, but that's part of the value and the beauty of understanding the hopes of the pastors, that you then get to make the decision for yourself. Like, is this something that I can support? Is this something that I want to support? Is this the direction that I'm going? Because if it is, then you can agree to move together for at least the next leg of the journey until the Lord clarifies whatever is next for you. And so it's important as leaders that we understand the hopes that the pastor has for the church, the hopes that he has for the people of the church, and the hopes that he has for himself. And so, for you all, I'm not going to go like way, 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 way in depth with each of these tonight, but I do think it's important as we touch on this that I make sure that I provide you with some of that information. And so, as it relates to the church, some of the hopes that I have for the church are that we would continue to challenge ourselves, and challenge others in the way that we live out faith and the way that we love each other. That we wouldn't get complacent in what we do and how our faith manifests. That we won't get comfortable, but that we'll continue to challenge ourselves to do more, to do better, to give more, to avail ourselves to the Lord to use us more. And I hope that we can continue to produce a culture that honors God and that will outlive us. That 80 years from now, if Church on Purpose is still around, if we could time travel, we would walk into Church on Purpose and it still have the DNA of Church on Purpose. Those are the hopes that I have for the church. The hopes that I have for the people. Most of you hopefully know this, but it's that each of you would find the fulfillment of walking in your calling. That you would understand your faith and be able to live it, that you would understand your purpose and begin to pursue it, and that you would understand the vision that God has for your life, and that you would actively engage in building that. Um, and that you would find the fulfillment that comes from walking in your calling. Life still is difficult, but it makes a difference when you know that it's for a reason. And I want that for each of you. And then for myself, I hope that I can lead and live honorably. Um, that my leadership can honor God and that my life can honor God. And I hope to live and to lead in such a way that my kids don't run from church when they're old enough to make their own decisions. Um, and if they decide to stay connected to church, that they don't perpetuate the elements of broken church. You know, those are the hopes that I have, that we do this well enough that all of our kids, when they're old enough and can make their own decisions about what they're going to do on their Sunday mornings and their Wednesdays, that they don't run from church because it didn't have value or because they saw us living double lives. Or that if they stay connected to church, that they won't perpetuate the same broken behaviors that cause people to run away from church. But that we can do this authentically and in a way that honors God. So knowing the heart of the pastor, knowing the hopes is important. Um, knowing the hindrances is also important. And when we talk about hindrances, we think about what obstacles does the pastor have to navigate, um, both personally and professionally. And I don't know if I clicked. Yeah, I guess those are together. So whatever, you already got some insight on helps. But what hindrances is the pastor trying to navigate, personally and professionally? A lot of this is about relationship, and how we relate to one another, and then how the way that we relate to one another positions us to be able to serve and support one another. And when we're unaware of the hindrances that a pastor is dealing with, then we can oftentimes put them on unrealistic pedestals or hold them to unrealistic standards and with unrealistic expectations. Um, and we can also ignore opportunities to provide support and covering for them. Uh, in the places where they're weak, um, and so for 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 me, and this is kind of um, a very public private moment of transparency and vulnerability, but I think it's important, and this is kind of the same approach that Hawkins took when he taught this particular session to Antioch. But I agree with him that I think it's valuable that um that I give you some examples of what that is. And so for me, on the personal side, I I struggle and have continued to struggle for years with my value, um and really um really believing that I'm valuable, and that I matter. Um and I struggle a lot of times with believing that what I do is effective. Um and which is why a lot of what I do, usually has some expectations for what comes out of it, because that's kind of how I gauge effectiveness, and the kind of how the Lord is helping me to grow here. Just in the last couple of months is really re-emphasizing for me that um, the fruit, the result is His job, that obedience is my job, and faithfulness is my job. Those are the only things that I can control. I can't control what comes out of what I do. Um, and that's a hard lesson to learn, because nobody wants to just keep doing stuff and not see results. Um, but that's not that's not my obligation. Now there are some just standard expectations, just, you know, input, output. If you put this in, then this is going to come out, on the back end. Like, there's just some basic things that should happen. There are some B's that should come from A, if, and so as we, continue to do things, there should be some expectations for like what happens, but how and when and how much of that happens, like those are some things that I have to let go of, which is really challenging for me, because I don't like wasting my time. And when I don't feel effective, I feel like I'm wasting my time. And when I feel like I'm wasting my time, then my desire to continue to engage begins to diminish. And The desire to find a more fruitful and more productive space to be able to utilize my energies and my efforts, starts to become a thing. Um, and so, just being able to detach my engagement and my activity from results, and also being able to detach my value from results, is huge. Um, because a lot of times I internalize like the lack of results um, as poor leadership, or poor communication. Um, I'll give you some examples here in a second, but then also, I'm like heavily future focused. Um, I'm always thinking 20, 30, 60 years down the road. And while that, can be a good thing in some aspects, what that causes me to do oftentimes is to overlook what's right in front of me. And so, being heavily future focused, I don't always acknowledge the progress that has been made. I don't always acknowledge um, the contribution that is being made today, because I'm always looking at things within the grand scheme. And so it sometimes can cause me to miss out on the moment, because I'm not in the moment. I'm 3 years from now in a whole nother moment that hasn't even happened yet. And so I've been working on that and trying to find some balance there. Um, but these are places and spaces where I struggle. And to kind of give you all some prime examples, like um I really appreciate the recognition that IMA gave for MLK. um but I mean, like, recognition is great, and I appreciate people taking the time to acknowledge the great things that have been done. Um, but more so than any kind of recognition or celebration or acknowledgement of activities, like, I would prefer partnership over prizes any day, partnership over plaques any day. If I never got another award in all of my years of continuing to serve in Omaha, but I had partners all along the way, then I would be good. Because partnership is the goal. And for me, it was a bittersweet moment, because, the award, like, specifically says, like, in addition to some of the other things that I've had the opportunity to do, the award was, given in recognition of my organizing of the community prayer services through, for the community over the last 2 years. And that's been a really laborious effort. And both summers, it has been an effort that has caused me to um, reevaluate my leadership, because it's difficult for me to challenge other churches and other pastors to encourage their people to be present, and the people from my own church show up sometimes. And it becomes even harder for me because I internalize that, like, even though I shouldn't take that and apply that to me, because again, like, my value and results in my effectiveness, like, all of those things go back to me evaluating my worth and my value. Then when I try to communicate something is important, and then, like, people don't respond and they don't show up, it makes me feel like I'm not effective in what I do. And I really begin to struggle. And I don't know if you all noticed this year, but we had 14 weeks of prayer services. I stopped announcing them at church after week 8, because I was like, I keep talking about this and then nobody shows up. So what's the point of continuing to talk about that? And that's not right. Like, that, I can't do that, but it's the result of just me really trying to um find the courage to continue to be faithful when the results that are produced aren't what I'm looking for, and not taking that and internalizing that as something personal, to say that um I'm a failure, or I suck as a leader, and I'm trash and I just need to let it go. Um and so really having to grow in the area of not attaching my value and my worth to the results that are produced by my work. And that's a big struggle for me. It's something that I've kind of been aware of for a number of years, but you know, like anything else, like growing through things takes time sometimes. Sometimes the Lord delivers you instantaneously. Other times he's like, nah, fam, you finna take this one day at a time for however long it takes for you to become who it is you need to be. And I feel like I'm making progress through it, but I know for a fact that I still have a long way to go. Um, and so it's important as leaders to understand those hindrances, because one, it helps you to contextualize things appropriately, but then it also helps to expose and identify opportunities to provide support in those spaces. um Professionally, um I can do a lot of things, and I realized that, like, the Lord just blessed me with the ability to do a whole bunch of things, but I have to realize, like, I'm really good at doing things and figuring things out, but I'm not as good at being able to translate that knowledge to other people. Um, and so I have to reevaluate, like, how I provide training and how I train people to do things that I already know how to do. Because, and I was having this conversation with Darren earlier today, one of the things that I realized is that there's always like a whole additional set of information in my brain outside of what I put on paper that I take for granted, like people will understand, but when they don't have all of the context, it doesn't give them the full picture to be able to do the things that they need to do. And so I have to reevaluate my approach to training people and equipping people with skills and knowledge that I already have, to make sure that I am providing what they need and not just what I think that they need. I'm not as good of a trainer as I thought. And that's an area that I have to grow professionally. Um, I have to professionally as well. Like, I spend more time on the wrong things at times. Um, but that's why I have to be a better trainer, so that I can delegate more things and those things be done, and then I have to think about those things, and I'll be able to let them go. And then sometimes, like, I wait too long to have necessary conversations. Um, I don't think I'm nearly as conflict averse as I used to be, but I still wait too long to have needed conversations, so that we can make sure that there is common understanding, and so that we can move forward and we can grow. Um, And so, so those are some of my hindrances. And from a leader perspective, it's important to understand those things, because then from a leadership perspective, if you feeling like, oh snap, like probably need to talk to Jonathan about that, but you waiting on Jonathan to talk to you about it, you already know that sometimes Jonathan waits too long to have conversations. And so you can go ahead and initiate that conversation if Jonathan hasn't already. And it helps everybody to be able to move forward. And not to say that that's always going to be your responsibility. Like I mentioned, like these are areas that I need to grow, that I need to develop, that I need to I need to mature in myself. And that, in some aspects, as it relates to my value, like some areas where I still need to find healing. But it's important as a leader that you understand my hindrances, because if you don't understand them, then you can end up contributing to them and magnifying them to where they become even more of a hindrance, and it makes it difficult for us to continue to move forward. And then, of course, as you see on your screen, helps. So what assistance or support does the pastor need? You know, um, and you see their self-care and encouragements. And we talked about this year before last when I took those 2 months off. Like, I was getting to the point in my life where I realized I had to stop waiting on somebody to give me permission to take the break that I knew I needed. But even in spite of that, I still need, like, there's still a part of me that needs to know that it's okay. And like, that still needs to be supported by you all in taking the breaks. And sometimes that needs the encouragement from you all to take a break. Um, but but with that, like knowing that I can't take a break if we're struggling to make sure that things are taken care of. Being away isn't the same as taking a break. Um, and if we're going to be able to take a break and actually take a break, then there has to be not only the opportunity to take the space, but also the awareness and knowledge that everything is going to be taken care of, that everybody's going to be good, and that all of the responsibilities that need to be done are going to be done. Or there is no real rest. But rest and retreat, and release, like, they all have to be a part of self-care, because one, it has to be modeled, um, but then two, it's just necessary for longevity. Like, if I'm going to be able to continue to do this for however long the Lord has for me to do this, like, I can't go crazy in the middle of it. And especially through COVID, there were certainly times where I felt like that was it. Like I was done. um and pastoring is a challenging journey. um and so having that support as it relates to self-care is really important. And then the last one, encouragements, and then I'll get some feedback from you guys before we move on um to our next slide for the evening. But in terms of encouragements, um I'm not so, and I went back, and I haven't taken it for years, but I went back today and took the love languages quiz, because I just wanted to be able to kind of share with you guys, like, what matters to me, and and what really encourages me along the way. And I'm not a really big gift person. Um and it's kind of the same thing, that the same category that the award falls into. Like, gifts are nice, but I would much rather, I much more appreciate your partnership. If I had to choose between a gift and everybody doing what they are responsible for doing, I would absolutely choose B every single time. Um, because I appreciate gifts. I appreciate the thoughtfulness of gifts, and the intentionality of gifts. And and some people find fulfillment in giving gifts. And so so I don't want it to seem like if you want to give something, you can't give something. But what I'm saying is, like, what encourages me more is is really two things. I boiled it down into two things: show up and speak up. that encourages me more. Show up. Your presence is a gift to me. When you are present in worship, that is absolutely a gift to the Lord, but it's also a gift to me. When you're on the line on Wednesday nights for Bible study, that is a gift to me, because what that says is all of my time in preparation to be able to give you some value during that time, it wasn't wasted. Um, your presence is a gift to me. Your follow through is a gift to me. Like if you say you're going to do something, when you actually do it, that's a gift to me. That encourages me more than you would know. Um, don't just applaud, assist. The Lord is, as really blessed us in the time that we've been out here, and the award that I got for MLK, like that's the result of a lot of collaboration and a lot of work. But I don't, applause is nice, but applause doesn't get work done. Rather than your applause, I would rather have your assistance at the community cleanup days, at the prayer services, because that is literally, y'all, like barely the beginning of the level of connection and collaboration between churches that the Lord has given me vision for. But it only works with y'all. And so I would much rather have your assistance over your applause. Um, that encourages me to show up and to see your faces. That encourages me. When I have outside speaking engagements and I'm going somewhere else to be able to do something, being able to look up and see y'all, that encourages me. Those are the kind of things that matter to me. My primary love language, even though like I got like three that are right there next to each other, but my primary love language is physical touch, but I really think it's less touch and more presence, because I know that like time and space is valuable to people. And when people are willing to give up their time and their space to be in my space, like that matters. Um, so show up, but then also speak up, you know. A lot of times the only things that a pastor hears from people are what they need. But I would love to hear how you're growing. I would love to hear like how you see yourself growing. I would love to hear about the victories. I would love to hear about the wins, because those encourage me along the way. Yes, absolutely. I still want to hear about what you need. But I'd also like to be able to hear about the victories as well. Because those are very encouraging. Um, and then, speak up on behalf of the church. Like it encourages me when I scroll my timeline and I see that you all have liked or shared a post from the church page. It's something really simple. Like, when I look up and see that you've shared the service on Sunday mornings, that encourages me. When I, go back after service and somebody's left a note about the impact of the message that day, that encourages me. And it's not just because it doesn't just encourage me because it's like, okay, the message resonated with you, but by you doing that, like somebody else sees that and then they realize that Church on Purpose is a place that's actually making a difference in people's lives. And your testimony provides the platform and the avenue for them to be able to get connected to our church. And I think that our church is pretty dope. And so, when I see you sharing those kind of things, when I see you making posts on social media about, um, about our church, like those kind of things encourage me. Um, so those are the encouragements, to show up and to speak up. Those help. And knowing these things as leaders help us to more effectively and more efficiently work together. So, one or two people, any feedback or any thoughts on that before we move to our next slide? And the next two slides, they won't take nearly as long as that did. But I just really wanted to make sure I took the time to be able to communicate that stuff. Go ahead,
Um,
Karen.
First, I want to say congratulations and thank you for all that you do. I also want to say thanks for teaching me how to spell hindrance. And third, just want to say that this is encouraging, and it's necessary. And I appreciate your transparency in the fact that we understand your vulnerabilities, but also it's realistic in being a pastor as well as a man, a person, feeling the way that you do about doing things and not having people show up, and the way that you feel about that, because it's like you said, the week before, at Christmas time, when you made the announcement about having church on Jesus' birthday, the week before Christmas, like having a birthday party for Jada's birthday, and the example of what if people didn't show up? It's kind of like that. It lies on you in a certain way, but it doesn't. It's a choice people are making. And when you have leaders in the church, the leaders need to realize when you're not showing up, you're not fulfilling what you said you would do. You're not coming to prayer at 9:20 and you're coming to church at 10:15. You're not there for, you know what I'm saying? You're leading, and when you're coming late, everybody else is going to come late. And that's less people there, that's less engagement. And you feel some type of way about that. And I understand that. And that's normal. You should feel the way you do sometimes, but that also falls on the leadership and the congregation. They need to, I hate to say it this way, but you got to have more respect for what's going on. And I need to be there for this because I'm the example. I've chosen to be a leader. Therefore, I'm going to lead by example, and I'm going to be there for prayer, and I'm going to be there for praise and worship. I'm going to be at church on time. I'm going to do what I was supposed to. Not being there once in a while is one thing, but every Sunday, every event, we have to support our pastor. We have to support this church in what is going on in our community. And if we're not doing it, then we need to reevaluate and look deeper and try to do that.
I appreciate that, Karen. And I do want to add to that there's grace when life happens. Everybody goes through seasons, and some seasons we have it and some seasons we don't. But that's the beauty of community, though. When we are connected and when we're communicating effectively with one another, and we can support one another and provide that grace in that space. And so, there's grace for that. But when we have it, I agree with you that it's got to be a priority. And I think tonight hopefully clarified for you all, like, why some things are priorities at church on purpose, and that's just because I believe that there are certain little things that we do that help us to build deeper relationships with each other and deeper relationships with God, and that position us to then be used by God in very special ways. And I could go off on a whole nother tangent there, but I'm gonna stop and let Ashley share.
In total agreement with Miss Karen and some of the things that she said, but I also just wanted to say thank you, Coach, for your level of transparency and for your accountability. Like, um, your accountability is really sometimes undescribable for me. Of course, I can't speak for other people, but um, you definitely help to not only hold me as a person, but I feel like you definitely hold the church accountable for the things that we need to step up and do. And I feel like that's something that is lacked in a lot of churches, who kind of just let things slide as long as we're doing the bare minimum. But because you are, you know, a shepherd of the most, or a servant of the most high, shepherding us, you really don't allow us to just do bare minimum. And I think a lot of that has to do with the example that you set. um, I feel like you sometimes don't give yourself enough credit in some of the things that you are doing, and how well you're doing them. um, but also for helping us to see and teaching us how um, to treat you as our pastor, where we can and how we can step up in the church. And I know sometimes being that vulnerable or being that open is not an easy thing to do. And I know we've had this conversation multiple times, about how uncomfortable that is for me. But um, I appreciate you continuing to work on yourself and growing in spaces and places and areas that will benefit the church, benefit the kingdom, and continue to better you as a person and for what God has called you to do. But just again, for being a really good example of what showing up and speaking up, as you said, what that's supposed to look like. So
Yeah, I appreciate you, Ashley. And I think, that part of that, connects with Courtney's message from Sunday, um, about just the need to give God our best, to be excellent in our service. And I don't like to, I really try to avoid that cliche phrase, spirit of excellence with things, because like everywhere I see that used, it just ends up turning into something else. It ends up forgetting the people element in it, and just becomes about doing things. And I don't ever want us to get to that point. But I do believe that, like, what we give God should, like, we should, what we give to God should be better than what we give to anybody else. Um, but that's out of personal assessment. That's got to be done. Like, if I can show up, for my work meetings on time and not miss those, then when I have the opportunity to do something for the Lord, like, what does that look like? Um, and so I just, I try to lead by example in those things. But to Karen's point, like, at the end of the day, those are personal decisions and personal responsibility. But as your pastor, like, in order to lead you all effectively, you got to understand my heart in this. And I really hope that through all of this, that you hear my heart. You know, I don't know if I'm communicating this as effectively as I need to. I don't know if it's making sense. I don't know if it sounds like I'm whining, whatever it is, but I hope that you can hear my heart through all of this, because really, at the end of the day, I do want us all to win. Like, I want y'all to win. I want y'all to be able to wake up in the morning and feel the same kind of fire that pushes me to get out of bed when I don't want to get out of bed. I want y'all to know what it feels like to keep pushing and get ready to break, and then the Lord just show you a glimpse of what he's doing, and you be able to find that boost to be able to keep going. Like, I want y'all to be able to experience the fulfillment of walking in your calling. um I want that so bad for you, and I hate the fact that I can't do it for you. I would if I could, but I can't. All I can do is what I do. And in the middle of me trying to do that, like, I still got stuff that I'm working through too. um I'm not perfect, far from it. And So we're all on this journey of sanctification together, like just trying to get better day by day, trying to be more like Jesus tomorrow than we were today, and a little bit less like who we used to be tomorrow than we are today. We're all on this journey together, trying to grow, and but I think it's important that you have the opportunity to understand, where my heart is in this. So anybody else before we move on? And I promise you, I'm gonna move through these next two slides in 5 minutes. All right. If not, so in addition to knowing the heart of a pastor, mature leaders should know the pulse of the congregation. When we talk about the pulse of the congregation, it's extremely important because leaders have the unique responsibility of, Hawkins said, of fostering the bridging of the two, fostering the bridging of the pastor and the congregation. Leadership is far more valuable to the culture in the church than I think we ever understand, appreciate, or realize. Because the leadership is responsible for serving as the bridge between the congregation and the pastor, and the pastor and the congregation. Leadership has to be able to trust the pastor and know the people at the same time. And so, knowing the pulse of the congregation means understanding the maturity of the congregation, the necessities of the congregation, but also the capacities of the congregation. And when we talk about the maturity of the congregation, this is the spiritual maturity of the congregation. So what are the common thoughts and the common attitudes and the common behaviors of the congregation that either are assets or are liabilities? You got to understand that. And leaders are positioned in this space because leaders are oftentimes, especially as the church grows, going to be more involved and engaged with the majority of the congregation than the pastor has the capacity to be able to do. And so, having an awareness of kind of what's the prevailing thought floating around the congregation, what are the what are the prevailing attitudes that are floating? How do people feel about the theme for the year? How do they feel about the call to do this and, the expectation to do that? What are people's attitudes about what's going on? And then what are behaviors that we see that are supporting what we're trying to do or could potentially be detrimental to where we're trying to go? So leaders have to have their finger on the pulse of the maturity of the congregation, but also the necessities. What are the needs of the congregation? The pastor isn't always going to have access to that information. And so, from a leadership perspective, in our roles as we function, we have to know about what the needs of the congregation are so that we make sure that we're in position to help respond to those. But then also the pain points in the congregation, because as leaders, there are things that members of the congregation will say to you that they will never say to the pastor. And so there is a certain perspective that you all will have that I will never have. And if you don't embrace your responsibility as a leader to have your finger on the pulse and to be able to identify those pain points and then be able to communicate those up the chain of information, then we can have cancer growing in our church and be completely ignoring it. And so it's extremely important that we embrace the responsibility to be sensitive to the needs of the church, as well as to those pain points. Because if something is causing pain, then that means that we need to give it some attention and make some adjustments. Now, adjustment doesn't always mean that we're going to remove the pain and make it comfortable. Sometimes pain comes to challenge us to grow. Sometimes pain is just a part of the growth process. If you don't believe me, start working out again next week. And you're going to find after day 2, it's going to be real painful for a couple of days. Pain sometimes is just a part of the process, but we cannot ignore it when it exists within our body. And then capacity, the capacity. So the strengths and the weaknesses of the congregation, you know? So what are the strengths of the people that we may not necessarily be maximizing right now? You know, I don't know what gifts everybody has. But it, you know, if you identify something and it's a gift and a strength that somebody has, and we're not maximizing that, we're not using that and leveraging that in some way, shape, or form, like that's the opportunity for leaders, but also for, you know, in relation to weaknesses. Like what are our deficiencies? What are some gaps? What are some places where we're not knocking it out of the park? Like being able to help identify those, because again,